Okay, I'd like to share a tremendous idea of this week's Parshas Pekudei. The key point that we need to remember is that the Mishkan that we're discussing here in this Parsha has one element, and that is something that makes it unique, is that this is a house for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That means that the Shechina rests here in the Mishkan, and then after in the Beit HaMikdash. That's a phenomena that doesn't exist, that's not understood. How is it possible that the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be on Etzim Avanim? It's something that's, it's mundane. The presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there. It's not in someone's intellect, it's not in someone's, it's not in our highest capacities as a human, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu chose. So there's a Sifrono that says that the Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu built with all its kelim had two advantages. Shechina rested there, and it lasts forever. This means that today we don't have the Mishkan. So what do you mean it lasts forever? It means that it was buried. It was never taken captive. That's a big deal because that means that something's everlasting, and that is a key component of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it's everlasting, it stays forever. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu rests, and so therefore the Shechina rested in the Mishkan that was built, and therefore it remains intact and in a wholesome and complete manner. What is the credit to it? Is because Moshe Rabbeinu was the one. It was Maseh Yedei Moshe. The actions of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is an Eved to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He is it says about a slave, that a slave is the property of the owner, and therefore, if you have if the slave buys something, it's not considered as he as an individual, as an independent, conscious human being bought it. Rather, it's almost like an asset did something, and therefore it never had to be transferred to the owner's property. It was directly entered the owner's property from just the very fact of the Eved buying it. It's not a messenger, because the messenger is two separate entities. One is doing on behalf of the other. An Eved, it's not doing on behalf of, because he entirely is just an asset, the property to the owner. So to Moshe Rabbeinu is called Eved Hashem, and therefore Moshe Kaneh Eved Kaneh Rabo. Moshe Rabbeinu had the ability to allow whatever he did was worthy, that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be able to rest his presence there. And once the HaKadosh Baruch Hu rested his presence there, so it's everlasting. This existed only in the Mishkan. The Mishkan is the only scenario that we find that the kelim, the utensils, the actual physical utensils of the Mishkan, of the Beit HaMikdash, were everlasting. In the other Batei Mikdashot, we say that that different than the Mishkan, that the Mishkan could have been here one day and be another place another day. So once it left the previous place, there was no value to that piece of ground. It never took on the properties of the Mishkan. It always remained just a piece of dirt. Different is the Beit HaMikdash, where it took the dirt of the Beit HaMikdash, it itself became a piece of Kedusha. Fine. But that's only specifically to the place. So the explanation could be given for the same reason that the Mishkan became everlasting and holy in the kelim, in the utensils. That is why the Beit HaMikdash was only able to carry its holiness in an everlasting way in the ground. What's the explanation? Who built the Beit HaMikdash? Not Moshe Rabbeinu. Even Shlomo HaMelech, he had to pray on behalf of his father David, in the presence of Kadosh Baruch Hu there, because also David had a similar idea of an Eved. But because whoever built the Beit HaMikdash at that time did not have that same ability to make a place that it's befitting, that could contain the Shechita Shechina, so it didn't have an everlasting effect like Moshe Rabbeinu's actions, Moshe Rabbeinu's handiwork did. However, the dirt, the ground, that is not something that a person needed to do. That was just ground. That was dirt. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have chosen that his Shekhinah should be resting, and therefore it's there forever. We find this is a pasuk that says, "Zot menuchati ad ead." Sorry, lo bati ad kan el menucha ve'el nachala. He did not come here until menucha, and he did not come until the nachala. And so the Mepharshim explained menucha is referring to Mishkan, the Mishkan, and nachala is referring to the Batei Mikdashot. So the explanation is like this: that menucha is the individual. He's in a resting. He's at rest. That is referring to the kelim of the Mishkan that they had that sense of menucha. They had those both resting in the sense that there was Shekhinah there, but only in the actual individual's rest. Nachala is referring to an inheritance. Inheritance is something that is usually involving land or property or whatever. That is referring to the Shechita Shechina happened in the land of the Batei Mikdashot. Now here's something very interesting with this land. I think it's the Bechaye, I think it's the Bechaye that says, or gives to reason, that the reason why the Mishkan was able to have this nitzchiyut, had this everlasting character, this feature, was because it had the Aron. Now, it says also about the third Beit HaMikdash that it's going to be forever because it will have the Aron. Unlike the first and second Beit HaMikdash, the second didn't have it at all, and the first had it, but it was buried at a later point in time. So we find that the Aron somehow, because it had the Aron, the Shnei Luchot HaBrit, had the Aron is a key feature in allowing for the Shekhinah present in the actual utensils of Beit HaMikdash. Not only because the actual Shekhinah was permanent, was also found in the two Batei Mikdashot. What was unique about the Mishkan and what's going to be unique about the Mikdash HaShlishi is that the actual Shulchan and the Mizbeach and the actual different utensils will be everlasting, will have the Shekhinah. So this teaches us that the Aron enabled that the physical matter should have the Kedusha forever. Should be able to contain the Kedusha forever. We know that the Aron, that each person, individual, there's has the correspondings of the Beit HaMikdash. And the same way there is the three compartments of the Hazara, Kodesh, and Kodesh Kodeshim. So regarding the Yehudi, there's the Mizbeach HaChitzon, that's Chitzon Yutalev, and the Kodesh HaKodeshim is referring to a piece of his neshama that is a nuclear truth, it's unsplittable, and it's not able to be broken down into intentions and reasoning or actions. It's not expressed through, and even in a time to the point where it's undeniable that it's there, even at the point of a person could be doing with his actions, he could be saying everything to reject it, because it's not dependent on actions. It's expressed through. So this is the Kodesh HaKodeshim. This is the Aron. Now, we find, and this is what brought about the everlasting feature of the kelim, of the physical stuff, that should be having the Kedusha of Kadosh Baruch Hu. How so? We find that interestingly, the Rambam doesn't choose to use the word Mishkan? How does the Rambam say the word Mishkan? Mikdash HaMidbar. When you say Mikdash HaMidbar, you're saying it's the Mikdash of the desert. So perhaps the Rambam, we know, hinted at many points in his works that to Kabbalah, but never said it out to the open. And this may be another time it was hinted. Knowing that the Mikdash is referring to that piece of the Nefesh, and knowing that the Nefesh, there's a person there's even a higher point of a Mesirut Nefesh, there's a higher point within one's Neshama, where just like we find that a person could be irrational for just insignificant things, it could be irrational about the way he conducts himself, there is also irrationality. Not always in Kedusha does it follow rationale. Sometimes the Yehudi has an irrational approach to Kedusha itself. This means that he does things beyond any measure, and he loses the thought process of logic. How do you express this? You express this in a midbar, desert. What's a midbar? What's the unique person? What's unique about the person? That he's a that he has a mind. Where does a person not live? In the desert. It's not an inhabitable place to be for a person. So when you say Mikdash HaMidbar, you're saying that this piece of the neshama that we spoke of earlier, that's the nuclear truth of the Yehudi, that is intact and in full because it's not based on actions. It exists forever. Mikdash HaMidbar is expressed the full most when in that irrational state of Kedusha, in the positive irrationality. And this is what we find in the Pasuk says, V'yarum v'nasa v'gava me'od. It's referring to sometimes the same word of Adam, you could flip it and it could become a me'od. Me'od means that you're interchanging the letters. Aleph is referring to the thought. Dalet is referring to the speech, right? The three compartments of a person. And Mem is referring to the Maaseh, but sometimes it's in reverse. And this is indicating to us, where does this deepest, innermost, irrational part of the nuclear truth of the Neshama express itself? It's expressed from which is really the piece of Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu was nuclear truth. He embodied the idea of nuclear truth. The Yehudi has a spark of it. Where is this brought about in full throttle? Who gets the first spark of it? Always Maaseh. Always the physical, mundane form of action. It's not conceptualized and then it's verbalized, and then it's brought to expression in the world. It's in reverse. This piece of the neshama is so deep that it has to create its own way of expressing, and that's specifically through ma'od, that action comes first. And this is the idea that we find in the Bechaya that says that the Aron was the one that brought about the everlastingness of the utensils, the physical utensils, because the Aron is that nuclear truth, and that was brought about where? Specifically in the physical world. Not only in the idea that the dirt has holiness in it, but rather that this table remains holy and will remain forever. Have a good week.